Hey guys, got a 10-minute game on the board. My opponent's rated 1067 and this is a 115 rated game for me. Interestingly, I just played an unrated game against somebody rated well over 2000 who's a candidate master. I managed to hold on for a while, but got pretty much soundly beaten in the ending. So now I'm playing this Alapin, delayed Alapin, so knight comes out first and c3 is supporting the d4 pawn push. Where's that flag from? Kazakhstan, yeah, of course. We're all experts in flags on chess.com, eh? Right. So I'm expecting my opponent to need more time than I need to calculate, so I'm going to try and capitalise on that. I'm going to be looking out for blunders, and I'm also going to be trying to apply the principle that when you find a good move, look for a better one. Right, so knight f6. So he's attacking this undefended pawn. I can't defend with my knight, which would be quite natural. I can defend with the queen. I can defend with this bishop, or I can defend with d3. I can push the pawn, and if takes, I could recapture with the knight. That's another idea. That seems quite forcing. Or we could give up the pawn. That's another idea. Okay, let's just play d3 for now. It allows me to bring out my dark squared bishop, might be able to take out that knight. Okay, interesting. Right, I'm going to play my bishop out anyway. So he's probably going to go for this. This is like the Sicilian dragon, I think. This is the King's Indian setup with this pawn structure there. He's taking his time over his moves. All right. Now I could push the pawn. Pawn takes, I've got knight takes, and that's quite a nice outpost for my knight, but it's not really defended there. I also need to think about getting my own king castled, so let's focus on that for now. Let's focus on development. I'm not unhappy with my pawn structure. Also, my queen can come out with check, but that can be met with bishop here, or knight there, or knight there. So that's not a threat. I still have maybe the option of d4, but right now that would undefend my pawn here. But if I was to swap off the knight, then I could push that and try and gain some control in the center. Let's just castle anyway. So I'm going to try and keep things pretty level, pretty even. We might grind down towards an ending. Hopefully have a bit of a time advantage when we get to an ending. Alright, so he's brought his knight out, makes perfect sense. I think queen d2 is an idea. Put my bishop here and try and swap off with this guy, leaving black vulnerable on the dark squares. Another idea as well with this kind of setup is an h-pawn push using this as a target. Okay, I've got a good 30-second time advantage at this point. I'd like to use the clock as a weapon here and try and capitalise on that. Okay, he's moved it. He's moved his knight. Why have you moved your knight? So the bishop can't take there. It can't go there. I can now kick the knight if I want. And where's the knight going to go back to? Huh. The knight is defended by a bishop, so for example, moving my knight with the discovery isn't that big of a deal. I'm just going to kick him away. What's your idea? Where are you headed to? You want to attack my bishop, do you? Now I can't put my bishop there now because he's got knight takes, which is interesting. So if I take his knight, he takes my bishop. I do have his pawn, right? I take knight, he takes bishop, queen takes pawn. Could work. Or I could drop my bishop back, say to here. Kind of like that idea, actually. Let's keep material on the board, keep the tension up. He's making pawn pushes on the king side. So before I just instinctively make that move and try and save the bishop, how about capturing g5 with the knight? Or even the bishop. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, or knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. Got some pressure on here. I've definitely got pressure on here. Question is it worth it? See, what we've got here is we've got a situation where he's got a piece under attack. Okay, now he's counter-attacking my piece, but I can, for example, use my piece to capture his pawn. Let's just do this. It's a good exercise, right? I'm assuming pawn's going to retake, because otherwise he's simply down a piece, right? Or he's down a pawn. Okay, so now I can, for example, just grab the knight. I've given up a bishop for a pawn at this point in time. If I grab the knight and the bishop recaptures, I've got queen takes g5 then, pinning this guy but also attacking the bishop on this square. Let's try that. If the bishop does come here, he's got two attackers on this knight here. So another option is to take that with a knight. Yeah, and then maybe we might trade bishops, and then the knight is in danger of coming into here with a fork. That's an idea. I'm actually down on time now. He's got 7.5. So if bishop takes, I think knight takes makes sense. And then looking at this square with a knight. So say bishop takes there, knight takes there. We might trade off bishops. He can't go here. He can't go there. He can't go there. He can't go there. Okay, so here we have a trade of bishops. And now my queen is threatening to come into h5 with a checkmate threat. And I like the fact I'm down a piece. Well, hang on, no, I'm up a pawn. How'd that happen? Okay, so there's two threats here. Okay, I've got a threat of a knight fork there. I've also got the threat of the queen coming into h5, h7 checkmate, with the knight covering this square. Okay. So I've got better king safety here with my extra pawns. Basically, this is my extra pawn. I've got 2 pawns here on the king side. He's got 1. All the other guys are equally matched. But there's a couple of threats now that black needs to notice and deal with. This doesn't work, for example. I just come in and win material. So what's he going to do? I really don't know what he's going to do. I've also got 2 pieces still in the box here. Not doing anything yet. Might want to bring them in. But I do actually have a checkmating threat with 2 pieces, which is not uncommon, but it's not common either. Normally you need more pieces than that. Okay, now option 1, take the pawn, fork the queen, and rook. There's no checks. That's definitely a good option. Option 2, queen h5, threaten this. Let's say we do that, and okay, so queen comes here. He pushes the pawn to defend. I grab the pawn anyway. I do this. His queen's going to come somewhere of her choosing. If I put my queen here, is that more... It is a bit more evil, isn't it? Yeah, we want maximum evil going on. So I'm threatening checkmate in 1. So now he's forced to do something about this. He's going to have to push that there. King can't run away. Okay, he's done that. So now I'm going to capture this, and I have a choice of 3. I've got a buffet of material. So what's the queen going to do? Queen comes here or here. We're going to trade off. Okay, so now I can grab the rook. Rude not to. Let's grab the rook. Okay, now I definitely want to get this knight out the way and this rook into the game. That's the plan. Obvious plan. Now, is he going to take back with the queen, or is he going to take back with his other rook? I think rook takes is definitely superior. Then he's got 2 pieces lined up on this semi-open file. I think pretty much whatever happens. So I'm going to be up 4. I'm up, I think, 2 pawns and an exchange. So with that in mind, something that you've always got to do is to say, what are the imbalances in my favour? So if you're up in material, try to use your material advantage. Okay. If your advantage is space, try and use your space. Right. If your advantage is that your opponent's king is stuck in the middle of the board, use that. Right. So one idea is just to push the pawn here. Queen takes isn't actually a threat because I've got 2 defenders. So I think I'm going to bring my knight round. I want to get my rook maybe to f3, g3, probably not h3, but 1, 2, 3. Okay, starting some counterplay on that side. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to carry on with my plan. If I can get rid of his last rook, that will severely diminish his scope on the board. So I think, if he pushes pawns, I just ignore it. Because he takes, I can take back or whatever. We'll see. Let's say he pushes a pawn, I go here, he takes my pawn, I attack his queen. Queen has to move, I get the rook, and that's my objective. Okay, I'm just going to play this straight off. I'm not worried about this pawn charge on that side of the board. Even rook here allows me to... No, it doesn't. Almost does. Okay, so now my first thought is to kick the knight away. Knight can't go here because I take it. Knight can't go here because I take it. So let's kick the knight away. I can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to stop the rook from going there. Okay, now c takes and the knight's attacked again. And he's out of options here. So I think swapping knights makes sense. I'm up in material, why not? Let's swap knights and then play this. Yes, I might give up a pawn. So we'll see if we can find a better move. I do have queen takes a5. If I play this, black's probably just going to capture there. So I'm thinking, yeah, let's grab the pawn. It seems to be the right move. Now I can really just solidify my position by putting my queen there and try and grind him down. I'm +5 at this point in time. I'm up an exchange and 3 pawns. I've dropped that anyway. Okay, now here, queen takes, that's okay. I think that's sensible. Queen takes, pawn takes, and the bishop can't recapture because rook is also looking at that square. The queen moves away, I might grab this pawn. We'll see, my rook might still come to here. I'd like to use this rook as well in some attack. If I can capture this pawn as well, and notice it comes with check, that's important. Let's take the pawn with check. If he blocks with the rook, I think rook f3 could be a bit evil. Okay, so he's evaded. Okay, queen is looking at this pawn here. So it would seem to make sense to just push that pawn. Yeah, I mean, I've got a big advantage, right? I've got 2 passed pawns on this side of the board. I'm going to play b4, I think. Yeah, I think I'm safe. This bishop is now completely penned in. Bishop can't actually move. So I'm not worried about that piece. I'm not worried about this barrage down here. I still have this always as an option, which would force the rook off the board. Because queen takes, pawn takes just isn't going to fly. Right, I don't really understand the point of that move. I have rook g3. I think he wants to bring his bishop into the game, maybe. Okay, let's just hassle the queen. Not worried about the queen coming down here. There's no support for her right now. This is a bit of a threat. The promotion square is a dark square, which this bishop could, in theory, cover in some way. So I might push up the a-pawn as well. 3 minutes 10 on the clock. This is worth a glorious 1 rating point. If the queen comes here, I've just got rook here. Okay, so the queen's looking at my rook. I am somewhat unconcerned. Queen's defending that pawn. I've got this. I think that's okay. Can't take that pawn, it's defended by the queen. Rook, take the rook, just lose. Okay, queen's running away. It's time to... No, I can't move this rook because it undefends that. So, even if I was to sacrifice 1 rook here, I could win this pawn, yeah? I'm just going to simplify. I'm going to take out the bishop, because that bishop could be potentially quite flexible and powerful in the ending. Say queen takes, gets rid of this threat, then I get a free pawn. Okay, he's thinking of a barrage, I get it. Would be checkmate. So I'm, okay, 1 option g3, another option queen there. And if we trade queens, I've got a big pawn majority, so I should be in clover. Yes, he gets a pawn, but I'm still going to be like 3 pawns up. Pre-move the recapture, because there's absolutely no other option. Then, so let's say queen takes queen, pawn takes queen, rook takes there. I'm going to put my rook here on f3, there. All right. Propose the trade of rooks, but also defending the 3rd rank. So that I can push a3, that's defending that, and I've only got 1 pawn to worry about then. But my opponent is down in time. Okay, that's a discovered attack on my queen. So I can check there or that, but that's both losing, so I'm going to go here. Again, threaten the queen. It's actually a 10 plus 5 game, so there is an increment, which means I've got to win it. And that's why, boys and girls, we should generally play with an increment. I don't do it enough. I should play with an increment all the time, really. Okay, now. Okay, so now you're threatening that again. Okay, I'm going to... Yeah, I'm going to push here. My queen is also looking at h6. So if the queen should ever vacate the premises again, h6 could actually be checkmate. Okay. Let's push this pawn. That limits the queen's movements to some degree. Now can't go anywhere down this diagonal. I also have a check. So now we are pretty much in the end game. Queens are still on the board, but there's very little material on the board. What I have to do now is whatever it takes to ensure the best result. And the best result here is a win. Might win on time. My opponent's nearly down to a minute 30. A3's a move. Threatening to push this pawn all the way as well. Check the king. Force it back. Okay, you don't like that. All right. Checking the king. He's got two attackers on this pawn. So I might even be tempted to play f4. Don't know what he's thinking about really, because queen takes is pretty much guaranteeing a loss because he's down to one piece and he's 3 pawns behind. And his opponent's more experienced, so you're in check. Brr, 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 brr. You have but 2 choices. Queen g6 to block the check, or king running away. The king goes to g8, I've got more checks. Okay, I'm going to play f4. He's down to 38 seconds. He's having to take a bit longer to think. Oops. Oh no, my pawn. I think he might. Oh no, so if he takes that pawn, actually I can block with the queen. That'll put the question to him. That'll make him think. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Come on, take the pawn. 2, 1, 0. He doesn't know what to do. Okay, interesting game. So there you go. That's playing a Sicilian. Well, playing against the Sicilian from a 1000 rated player. So where did the game turn? Let's just go through this. This is Chess Queen Alana 01. Okay, so delayed Alapin, defending my pawn. And now he's going for the dragon setup. It's perfectly, I mean, this is played at every level. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going after his knight. Defends, get ready to castle. Castles, castles, develops. Very, very good so far. Really good play. So apologies if my opponent is a she. There is this weird kind of chess protocol of calling everyone he. Okay, and kicking the bish. Bish retreats. Again, now this I think just breaks one of the golden rules. You want to leave these pawns here. You want to leave the pawns in front of your king unless you've got a really good reason to move them. And you'll see, I think this is where my opponent comes slightly unstuck. So here I decide that actually removing these pawns from the game. Okay, so here, this is the tactic, right? My opponent's got a piece under attack, so they're attacking me in return. However, I can remove the attacker, right? Win a pawn, recaptures, and now I get the knight. So I've won a pawn through that, okay? And I've lost it again, and now I've won it again. Now we've got a face-off between bishops, which we anticipated. Trade them off. Terrible move, because I was going to move to e6 anyway with a fork, and now the fork is still on, but first I throw in something more pressing, which is the threat of mate in 1. Knight's protecting this square, that is mate in 1, okay? So I'm forcing now, the h pawn is also having to move, and now, that's an in-between move. Now I grab the pawn, so now I'm 2 pawns up with a fork, get the knight, and now it's time to bring in the other rook, right? Now if I'd left my knight there, it would have been a very different game. There's no point being up in material unless you use your material, right? Don't have an extra rook and not bother to engage it. So time for the rook to come in. In comes the rook. Okay, he prevents this. I guess another move here could have been knight f3. Try and trade off the knights. But I kick the knight, takes. You are still kicked, mate, off you go. Off he goes, trade off the knights, grab a pawn, which seems to be the right thing to do. Because literally, yeah, I mean, this is an idea. So there, queen might grab a free pawn, I get that, bishop goes here. I don't know, it'd probably be playable, but I figured that the right thing to do was to grab the material and try and protect my stuff. Okay, I lose that pawn anyway. Now we have a proposed trade of queens, retreats. Could have clearly traded queens here. I'm +4 in material. Another idea could maybe have been rook to g3 to pin this bishop against the king. But it doesn't really matter because the queen's defended by the rook anyway, so it doesn't really force anything. Okay, so I grab a pawn. He could have grabbed a pawn here, he or she. Could have grabbed a pawn here. And now I decide to move my pawn and I throw it up to 2 squares. I want to put pressure on my opponent, right? And the threat of an advancing pawn threatening to promote is important and powerful. So queen g5, hit the queen, propose a trade of queens, opponent's not interested, still got the queen and rook in line, which is good. And here I decide to simplify the game by swapping my rook for a bishop and a pawn. Okay, this would leave my opponent with only 1 pawn, and of course, down 1 bishop. The bishop is quite a good piece. Okay, a bishop, when you've got an open board in the ending, is not maybe that far off from a rook. And then I get this pawn, and she now threatens mate, so we have to do something. Do you want to trade queens? Hell no. Do you want to trade queens this way? Hell no. Okay, well in that case I'm just going to push g3, and now I'm going to push another pawn. I'm going to put the pressure on. Check. Moves back. f4 now. And we're running seriously low, and that was actually the end of the game. Now, if the queen had come here, I could have gone there, again proposing an exchange of queens. I'm still up 3 whole pawns. So I guess, something like this might have been playable. But my queen's defending that one. I could have now just played queen to here and actually defended everything. Okay? Also with the threat of move this, take that, and you're in trouble. Okay, so very good game. I actually enjoyed that very much. Thank you to my opponent, Chess Queen Alana01. And thank you for watching. Hope it's been useful for you, and I'll see you later.